Hello, dear friends and comrades. Greetings from Finland. Mainit na pagbati at mahigpit na yakap sa inyo, lalo na kina Tita Princess, Kuya Fidel at sa buong pamilya Nemenzo. Though we knew this moment would come due to his old age and debilitating illness, like you all, I've been devastated since I received the news of Kadodong's passing, especially because we were looking forward to celebrating, honoring, and surprising him on his 90th birthday. Like you all, I wish I were saying this tribute for the living on the 9th of February 2025. But looking back, as I read my old correspondence with Kadodong, as well as my previous post on Facebook and Blogger over the last 2 decades or so, I'm glad to realize that I was able to write and articulate my appreciation, affection, and gratitude to him while he was alive. I feel somewhat fulfilled that I was able to visit Kadodong and Tita Princess at their home twice during his final year. Just like in the old days, in a typical Filipino way, without prior notice, I showed up and knocked on their door, and as always, I was warmly welcomed. On my first travel to Manila since the pandemic, I took the chance on November 1, 2023, undas noon, to visit the UP campus and happily found myself spending quality time for about 3 hours with Kadodong and Tita Princess. Vintage Kadodong. As we were to begin the conversation, he asked, "Magkape tayo o whiskey?" I opted for oolong tea because I had to catch my flight soon that same evening. During that visit, he was like bidding farewell to me already, saying to me to tell friends to visit him very soon. Matanda na ako. He also said to me, hindi na tayo magkikita. I immediately responded, "Sir, magkikita pa po tayo." And indeed, as promised, during my trip to the Philippines in June this year, I made a surprise visit again, spending several hours with him and Tita Princess. I have been so lucky to have known the legend Kadodong in the last 27 years of his multifaceted, legendary life. I have been truly honored and privileged to have been taught, befriended, and supported by him since I was his bachelor student in 1997, 1998, fresh from his stint as visiting professor in Tokyo. And again in 1999, the same year we cheered for his candidacy and eventual election for UP president. I kept in touch, updating him from time to time during my MA and PhD studies abroad. Ever since the use of emails and internet, Kadodong had shown me simple thoughtfulness, if not basic etiquette of a well accomplished, brilliant yet humble scholar by thoughtfully acknowledging and replying to email messages. I have been a fan of him from the very beginning. In fact, in our student organization, UP Sapul, UP Samahan sa Agham Pampolitika, my org mates made a moniker of me for the sign-up sheet of applicants. Batang Dodong ng lumaki. Kadodong continues to influence and inspire my style as a teacher and my perspective as a scholar. I would not have pursued the discipline of political science, specifically critical political economy, had he not become my professor in the introductory course at UP. One pedagogical method of Kadodong that I adopted in my theory courses until now in Denmark and in Finland is uh, reality-based teaching of theory, relating current events to political, economic, social phenomena, concepts, and theories. I would start with news clippings, headlines, and features before delving into theoretical discussions. In our Introduction to Political Science course in 1997, we did not have any textbook, but he required us to watch news and read newspapers every day. At the start of every class, his question to us was, "Anong balita ngayon?" From the news of the day, he would draw out to explain relevant political concepts and theories, thus impressing on us meaningfully the so called everyday political science or politics of the day to day. The expected pedagogical outcome of this style was to develop our abilities to learn to read between the lines. We were just teenagers then, yet he was thinking of our future in a complex information age, honing not rote memorization but our problem solving and critical thinking skills. I could not wait to be in the classroom with Professor Nemenzo. So even though I was only in my second year, I enrolled in the practicum course, which at that time he designed as citizen participation in the legislation process, where we as a class practiced lobbying for the passage of the Clean Air Act. This was in 1999, and thus I belonged to the last cohort of students that he taught as an active teaching staff because he officially assumed the UP presidency that same year until retirement. As a student in Kadodong's introductory and practicum courses, I appreciated more his ideas on the dialectics or the organic link between theory and practice. Indeed, as Kadodong emphasized, theory grows out of practice. I think Kadodong was the only UP professor I gave the best commendation in the student evaluation for teachers. Inspired by Kadodong, I easily got recruited to BISIG or the Bukluran sa Ikauunlad ng Sosyalistang Isip at Gawa through my good friend Gary Ador Dionisio. More important than getting further exposed to Kadodong's socialist analysis, strategy, and vision, I learned a lot having acquainted and interacted with many engaging and committed progressives and activists. I would visit his office when he was the UP president. He supported my initiatives when I was chair of UP Sapul, like showing up during our anniversary night, and when I was representative of the Department of Political Science to the CSSP Student Council, notably by sponsoring the political discussion series where he came to open and speak at the inaugural event. Yet, what was more heartwarming was when Kadodong met with a group of precarious janitors who I accompanied to his office and talked about their grievances regarding work conditions, delayed salaries, and other unfair labor practices of their job placement agency. During this meeting with the janitors, Kadodong also called on his vice president to be with us. When I was doing my master's in Malaysia in 2004, I had some pensive and funny moments with Kadodong when he attended the first ASEAN EU Rectors Conference held at our Asia Europe Institute in the University of Malaya. Together with my classmate, I picked him up at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport. In a taxi, Kadodong was looking through the window, observing the more advanced infrastructure of Kuala Lumpur. I remember him saying, "Nung 1960s, walang-wala itong Kuala Lumpur at Singapore kumpara sa Manila." Then I asked, "Bakit po? Anong nangyari?" Kadodong simply answered, "Si Marcos kasi, ang daming sinayang." After checking in at his hotel, we went out to eat late at night. Kadodong did not fancy dining in posh restaurants. He liked eating at sidewalks in hawker stalls. We went to Jalan Elor, a busy street of Chinese food hawkers. He was hungry. Many offered us their menus. He was particularly craving bakute, a pork rib dish. He was hungry and said to me the purpose of the KL trip. Pupunta lang ako rito para kumain. A Chinese vendor approached us, speaking in Chinese, convincing us to eat in his stall. Kadodong spoke to him in Tagalog for quite a while. They had a Chinese Tagalog conversation. After the conversation, I asked Kadodong, "Kinuusap niyo po ng Tagalog?" He replied to me, "Oo, pareho lang yun. Kahit mag-English ako, hindi rin kami magkakaintindihan." We burst into laughter. After our dinner, he went for a foot massage. He missed the conference the following day because he said he couldn't walk due to that hard massage. Karadong had remarkable wit and humor. He taught us Weber's concept of charisma, unaware that he had his own charisma to many people. He was impressed by street smart people. Actually, he was street smart himself. I went back to the Philippines after my graduate studies. I got reunited with Kadodong when I had the wonderful opportunity to work with him a bit closer, together with Tita Tina Ebro and several other activists of the Philippine left. When he co-founded and chaired the Laban ng Masa, I had many Kadodong stories and anecdotes during my time with Laban ng Masa. Kadodong would even correct the font choice in my draft letters of invitation. When we invited Professor Paul Kamak from Manchester as keynote speaker for Laban ng Masa's second Dem Left or Democratic Left conference, we included it as part of class CLASS or Critical Lectures and Studies on Socialism. Kadutong wanted Paul to talk, among other things, about what happened to Latin American dependency theorists and liberation theologists. When I drafted a paper, his comment on it was straightforward, especially because we were supposed to use it for political communication, not least for Laban ng Masa. He remarked, "What's most important is to be understood and not to confuse people with academic jargons. The communication skills of their generation of insightful Filipino thinkers and doers like Cadodong, Randy David, Joel Racamora, Edicio de la Torre, Tita Princess Nemenzo, Tita Evelyn Serrano, and the late Gani Serrano really amazed me. In both speaking and writing, be it in English, Tagalog, or their provincial languages, they are gifted with eloquence. In 2006, I'll never forget when our Laban ng Masa mobilization along EDSA against the Arroyo regime was violently dispersed by the police force. I ran towards Kadodong, who was seated on the sidewalk. He was exhausted, catching his breath. Together with others, we moved out of EDSA and had some food at the food court in Cubao. He asked us, "Nasaan si Randy?" We said that we received a report that Prof. Randy was taken to Camp Karingal. A loyal friend that he was, he said, "Puntahan natin si Randy." Some of us opposed him. "Wag po muna, sir, baka maaresto kayo." We then drove around Metro Manila without knowing where to go, thinking that the authorities were also on the lookout for him. During this drive, Kadodong was quiet, in deep thought for most of the time. Suddenly, he insisted, dalhin ninyo ako sa UP. Uwi na ako. His reason was that I'd rather be arrested in UP than be found by the police and military anywhere else. Eventually, we obliged and dropped him near their home at the UP campus. Ronald Llamas, who cares much for Kadodong, urged and pushed me. Puntahan mo, samahan mo. I ran to Kadodong as he was walking to their house. I said, Sir, sir. He turned around and yelled at me, Umuwi ka na. This discernment of Kadodong under pressure must be based on his previous experiences in resisting state repression and in his feeling of safety in UP as his home. During our Laban ng Masa days, I also remember when I was with Kadodong in their house and the Malaysian development and political economist Jomo KS came on and came on an unplanned visit to check on him. There was news then that Kadodong might be arrested by the police following the arrest and detention of several other civil society leaders and activists. Jomo was in the UP Diliman campus for the launch of his 3 books on development economics, one of which was co-edited with my Norwegian supervisor Eric Reinhardt. Jomo asked Kadodong if he needed help from the United Nations. At that time, Jomo was the UN's Assistant Secretary General for Economic Development. Jomo also had experienced years of persecution in Malaysia for his critical scholarship. How I wish that my generation of progressive scholars, currently afflicted with precarity and consumed by the pressures of competitiveness, the culture of patronage, and the vice of careerism, could keep the same generous spirit of internationalist solidarity among scholar activists and public intellectuals across Southeast Asia and the world. For instance, when scholars at risk and activists harassed, like in the case of Walden Bello in several instances, the international colleagues, comrades, and allies of Filipino scholar activists would immediately come to the aid of the persecuted and mobilize in expression of solidarity in and outside the academia. About 10 or 11 years ago, when I greeted him on his birthday and updated him about my PhD, a family-oriented and patriotic Kadodong wrote a series of messages to me. Maraming salamat, Kabon. Sana wala na akong birthdays. 78 na ako ngayon. Nasihan ako na malapit nang matapos ang iyong PhD. Sana bumalik ka sa atin at dalhin mo ang iyong Danish wife. Akala niya, Scandinavian ang napangasawa ko. I corrected him in my reply and then he wrote back, even before I got your clarification, Princess already corrected me. I just presumed that Amlet is Swedish, Pinoy pala, so you have no reason to stay away from our country. Come home after you get your PhD. We have a lot of things to do for our country. Now that I am getting old, I hope people like you will take over from us. When I submitted my dissertation and was preparing for my defense, my constant cheerleader and moral booster, Kadodong advised me, I am anxiously waiting for the result of your viva. That's what the British call the oral examination. I am confident you will pass. I have saved a copy of your thesis in my hard drive and I will read it little by little when I have the time. In the interim, I encourage you to take, well, there was a planned postdoc position then at the City University of Hong Kong. Kadodong closed the letter advising me, but you should plan to come home and take over from us, who are already in our sunset years. There is still much to do to rebuild our unfortunate nation. During the pandemic in 2022, Kadodong and Tita Princess attended the online book talk of Paul Kamak, which I organized as part of my courses on global political economy and governance of the world economy at the University of Helsinki. Hence, I have felt his continuing support for my professional endeavors, in addition to his thoughts for my family and children. Sometime last year in 2023, I reached out to Jojo Abinales and Gareth Richards, proposing to collectively work on and publish a Festskrift for Kadodong. Among the intellectual themes that I or we hope to be written in honor of him were Marxism, socialism and communism, political economy, social movements, education and economic freedom, social change and revolutions, military and politics, education, Manchester School of Social Science, geopolitics, political thought, the public intellectual, globalization and global capitalism, and Philippine society. There's so much I learned from Kadodong. We will realize more his uniqueness and brilliance as a thinker as we reflect on his ideas, life, work, and contributions. I would like to highlight a few points that seem to be less noted and which continue to influence and inspire my own scholarly work and point of view. Firstly, Caradong was the first to provide me a solid framework on understanding the relationship between technology and society. There's much talk and focus on his ideas on unconventional politics and mass movements, but like Marx, Caradong was a modernizer and a proponent of a productive manufacturing base, while critical of capitalist progress from a humanist sensibility. Hence, Caradong's vision for UP into the 21st century was modernization, specifically to revolutionize the institution's technological capabilities and brain power. His mentality was not only historical, but also futuristic. He did not only understand the process of social change, but also of technological revolutions. I believe that the vision for the UP Techno Hub was akin to a national or social innovation system where there are linkages or triple helix of the academe, government, and industry. Secondly, Caradong understood Marxism as a theory of social change, where capitalism is critically analyzed through historical materialism and class analysis. By using dialectical reasoning, Caradong did not espouse the end of history. He did not have the view of a linear trajectory of history. Caradong's presupposition or starting point was that theories about social change must change through changing times. As an alumnus of UP, I am proud to say that Professor Emeritus Francisco Nemenzo Jr. was one of the best presidents of UP. I strongly believe that a building, center, place, hall, room, occasion, or award should be named after him in memory and honor of his exceptional contributions to UP and scholarship. He was a homegrown leader and thus very familiar with UP's organizational intricacies, capacity, needs, and aspirations. He was most prepared to lead a responsive community of scholars and learners to the challenges of social change, technological change, as well as climate change. A man of principles, Caradong had a sense of both history and foresight, natural and social sciences, patriotism and internationalism, competition and cooperation, diversity and solidarity, honor and excellence. Caradong also envisioned UP's role in society, especially its cooperative rather than competitive relationship with fellow state universities and the whole public school system towards national development goals and the common good. If pursued, UP could have been playing a major role in addressing the education and learning crisis now plaguing the country and future generations. One of Cadodong's memorable lines was, "Ang tunay na pagbabago ay magmumula sa mga mulat na mamamayan." Thirdly, Cadodong impressed on me that socialists should also be liberal, meaning liberal politically, socially, and culturally. This is consistent with his sincere defense of academic freedom, human flourishing and emancipation, interdisciplinarity, and liberal arts education. After all, for Kadodong, socialism means democracy at every scale, from the household to the university to workplaces to the state and economy. Fourthly, Kadodong had a sense of what is now properly referred to as prefigurative politics. I think this was partly an operating framework for BISIG, a union of Filipino socialists. A main objective of BISIG was to deepen the ideology of socialism from a Filipino context and viewpoint. His observation was that there's no such thing as Filipino Marxism, for what so called Filipino Marxists were doing was merely interpreting rather than developing Marxist thought. But much more than this, prefigurative politics inspired by the writings and activities of Kalodong meant that we, as socialists, should conduct our individual and social lives, including our relationships with fellow travelers and fellow human beings, in ways and manners we sought, aspire, and envision our future society to be. I will forever miss you, sir. Kasama ng aking mga pamilya, taos puso ang aming pasasalamat sa inyo, Kadodong. Dahil sa inyo, isang probinsyanong Cebuano, nagsimula ang laki sa kalye ng Maynila na tulad ko na magkaroon ng progresibong pananaw at direksyon sa buhay. Your powerful ideas, notable legacies, and good memories shall live on in me and through many of us. And I will keep on storytelling about you with fondness, sharing with others, especially the youth, my learnings from you. 6 months ago, during my latest visit to the Nemenzo home, the last words to me of Kadodong were, "Sige, Bon, kailangan ko na magpahinga." I held his hands tight and hugged him. "Sige po, sir, magpahinga na kayo." As I said to you during our last meeting, we are always grateful and indebted to you. We are carrying on. We shall continue to value and honor your legacy through our work. In my own little way, I will do my best to carry on as your former student and now as a scholar activist. And yes, we will take good care of Tita Princess. Rest in peace, rest in power, Dr. Francisco Nemenzo. Dodong, sir, my most favorite professor, my great mentor, my thoughtful comrade, my beloved friend.